Yo, so today I'm going to be telling you guys all my favorite free plugins. Alright, so this is going to be more of a list video with not many sound examples, just because my CPU, I have everything open right now, so it would just be very crackly. So if you're looking for examples, definitely just go back and watch some of my other videos. I've used these in pretty much every video, so yeah. So we're going to start off with the completely free ones and then move on to some demo or budget versions at the end of the video, not really focus on that too long. Alright, so to start off the free instrument VST section, I have the Kontakt player. Which does offer you a ton of stuff and a ton of banks and interesting sounds. It's really just kind of a mixed bag. There's a little bit of kind of everything in here. So if you're just looking for in general, not a specific type of sound, this is definitely the way to go. But the main ones I like to use from this are the Gentleman, which is probably the best free piano out there, and then the Yang Queen, which is a Asian kind of inspired guitar kind of thing. I think it's an actual instrument. It might be actually called a Yang Queen, but I don't really know what it's actually called. But overall, this is really good, of course, for ethnic melodies, and the piano is really good for dark melodies and just pain melodies and really anything you would use a piano in. So with the Gentleman, you get a lot of alterations for a free VST. So you have all of these different presets where it would be staged in a different place, like church, chapel, wherever you want to play a piano. But then you can really mess with the space, autonomy, and tone things to really kind of darken it up. You can almost make it sound weird and lo-fi, ambient, dark kind of thing. So the alterations really do offer a lot along with the presets. And then for the Yang Queen, you get a lot of presets over here. So you have the default ones, and then there's a couple ones that I don't really like in here. The majority of them just have very small differences, but overall they sound pretty good. So for this, you get an auto tremolo feature, which makes it kind of repeat itself automatically also. And you can either control that autoly or with the mod wheel on your MIDI, which is sometimes kind of tedious because then you only have one hand to play and you can't do chords and top line at the same time. But overall, when I use this, I usually just turn that off, turn the scale to chromatic, root note at C, and then you can just click in a melody, and overall it's a little bit more easy. But overall, this is really great, and I think where it shines is not for complete melodies, but for ethnic guitar accent kind of things. Again, the velocity and rolls and tremolo features are really good, so it's kind of nice to spice up your melodies that way. And then all the other melodies, again, kind of a mixed bag. There's a little bit of everything, as you can see here. E-piano, the electric train set thing is more like a mallet with crazy effects on it. Flutes, funk things, guitars, violins. There's just a lot in here, so definitely go ahead and check this out if you are interested in kind of an all-in-one kind of thing. Alright, so for the next VST is Spitfire Labs. Really, this has no problems with it. The interface is pretty good. You do have some effects built into it. I believe you can change this based on what preset you're using. But overall, this is kind of another mixed bag thing. There's strings, guitars, percussion sort of things, pad synth. There's just a little bit of everything. But the main thing that's kind of bad with this is that you do just have to push the volume up to 400% because the presets are pretty quiet. But overall, if you look through the browser, you can see here that you have kind of the string things, percussion, experimental, brass and woodwind, so maybe some flutes in there, guitar, synth, just again, a little bit of everything. And overall, all the sounds are really good. And it's not like these are all different paid banks and just the base plugin is free. Everything in here is completely free, so it's a lot for it being $0. Next on the VST thing is Spitfire BBC Symphony Orchestra. This is one that I just picked up rather recently, and it is very good. The weird thing with this is it's kinda not free, kinda free, it's in between. So basically on the website, I believe you can pay $50 to get the VST immediately, and if you don't want to pay the money, obviously no one wants to pay money, just get things for free, but you can do a little survey. It's pretty lengthy. It's I would say a medium length survey. It's nothing crazy, but you fill that out, and then in 14 days, I believe they review your survey, and then you either get accepted or denied. But after 14 days, you'll either get sent the VST or not, I guess. I'm not really sure. I got accepted, so I don't know the opposite of not getting accepted. And also the survey is really easy. It's not really anything to worry about. It's just basically what kind of stuff you make and your music background, I guess, and also things you want to learn in music. What your sound selection is lacking was a question. and then your music heroes was a question. But overall in this, kind of the same interface as labs, but it just kind of looks a little bit nicer in my opinion, a little bit more colorful. But you have 2 violins, and with all these different things you have different like presets within them. So you have long, staccato, pizzicato, and tremolo. The tremolo really sounds like great. That's one of my favorite little features. And then you have cellos, basses, and then along with like some brass things, some woodwind things, horns, and then some like more percussion oriented things. But overall, this is like my go-to for like orchestral little baby dark type melodies, and it's just really good once you like throw just a touch of reverb on it. All right, so next on the free VST list is Vital, which is pretty much the go-to alternative for something like Serum. And I think it might be a little bit better in like the sound design portion of it, just because it has 3 oscillators along with the noise oscillator instead of Serum that has 2 and then the noise oscillator. So basically this is what the interface looks like. I haven't really played around with the sound design too much, but it is pretty good because the presets are good, and obviously the presets are used with the sound design features, so I don't know, it just kind of makes sense. But the stock presets are kind of here and there. You can find some good ones. Some of my favorites, like there's 2 main ones that I use a lot of the time, the AEEO like experimental ARP. I use this a lot for like Ken Carson, Playboy Cardi type melodies, and then also the Moog pluck for like bass in a dark melody or something. Overall, I think if you're looking to get into sound design or you just want a Serum alternative, this is definitely the way to go. And I also believe with Vital, it's free just to get the thing with like the 80 bass stock presets. But then I believe you can pay something like $5 or $10 a month, and then you get additional presets. I think it's like Splice, where you have like a certain amount of credits and then you can pick stuff out from there. Next on the free VST list is the Ample Guitar Lite. This is a pretty decent guitar, and really like the shining point for it is the effect noises. It really just makes it sound a little bit more realistic and spices it up a bit. But overall, it's a solid guitar plugin. And it doesn't really work that well for like Ian Dior emotional type like electric guitar, almost like where you throw guitar rig on it. Where I really like to use it is more like Spanish guitar melodies and ethnic melodies. That's just really where the sound fits in for me. And then also in this plugin you have a strummer feature, so you can get some like automatic strummed things. It's basically kind of like an arpeggio sort of deal. Overall, I don't use this that much, but it is pretty decent. And then again, back to the like slap effects, there's like maybe 8 like sliding across the fretboard, also just like slapping the strings. And then also you can turn on to where it'll like play it as it'll play the effect noises as like the melody plays, so it kind of combines them so you don't have to add them in later. And then finally, I haven't really played around with this too much, but when I use it, it is very good. Ample Bass Lite. Again, same kind of selling points as Ample Guitar, having these effect noises and stuff. And overall, it just sounds a touch more realistic than Boo Bass, which is stock FL plugin. But you have a little bit more like effects and stuff you can mess with. But the bad thing with this is it doesn't have the strummer feature, which I think would be kind of cool to get really interesting bass lines that way. But I don't think you really need it. But overall, it does sound pretty good. It's a great acoustic bass for things like ethnic melodies or things like pain melodies or emotional piano melodies. But yeah, those are all like the free VSTs that I use pretty much every day. But the one I would recommend the most to get is the BBC Orchestra. You can find a lot of these other sounds in other free plugins or just more expensive plugins or even budget plugins. There's just other options, but really with the orchestral sounds, it's kind of hard to find good things outside of like the $400 Kontakt banks. But it is very solid, and I would highly recommend you check it out and do the survey. So now we can move on to the free effects. The first one being Ambiance, which I use literally every melody. I like to use it as an automation clip for the intro, and then where the loop would repeat itself, so it just fades really smoothly, starts off with a little bit of reverb, ends with a little bit of reverb, just overall just adds a little something. I would consider this more of like a heavy, fuller sounding reverb than something like Fruity Reverb. Overall, it's just a little bit more aggressive, like not like angry aggressive, but like more present aggressive, I guess. I don't really know if that makes sense, but it's a great reverb, and of course it's free, and it also has a ton of presets, so you don't really have to worry about like making your own or knowing how to make your own. A lot of the presets are really good. Personally, I just use the default one or the pen snare room gator preset is pretty good for like lead melodies and stuff. And then next on the effects side is the dblue glitch version 1.3. I don't really know if the version matters, but this is basically an alternative to something like Effectrix or Looperator. It does the same kind of thing. The interface just isn't as great, and I don't think you have as many options, but you can still get like really interesting hi-hat patterns and that sort of stuff with this. So you can see here that you have all of these like 1, 2, 3, 4. They're each assigned to different effects, like 1 being tape stop, 4 being shuffler, and then you can go ahead and draw it in and just kind of play around with it like that. And I believe you can make it longer. You just have to kind of like shift this knob here. But overall, it's pretty decent. Obviously, those other options are a little bit better. And Looperator also does have a free demo. I just haven't played around with it that much. And then also you do get pre-made presets in the form, they're called like pattern banks. But in my opinion, these are not very good. They're just a little bit too busy. So basically the go-to is just using this black tool here to kind of delete everything, and then just going from there. So next is Finisher Micro, which is probably top 2, top 3 for me. It is very good, mostly just for the infinity preset, which adds a sparkle to your melodies, which is very cool. But with this, it's kind of like a multi-effect sort of thing. Like you have things like the jet plane preset, which is more of like a filter sweep sort of thing, along with more basic like phaser, chorus, flanger, reverb kind of things in the plugin as well. But overall, what I would use this for is just the infinity preset. That sparkle feature is just so good. I believe like the other way you could get that same kind of feature is Effect Rack Crystallizer, I believe does the same thing, but obviously that's pretty expensive and this is free. So next we have like the trio of free Vahalla plugins, which are all very good. Probably the best one is Supermassive and Frequency Echo. Space Modulator is just kind of but we can start off with Frequency Echo. So here's what it looks like. So you have your mix knob, delay knob, and shift knob, which will kind of like shift the pitch of the delay, and then the feedback knob. Really, you can just kind of play around with this and get some really interesting delays that are a lot more interesting than using something like Fruity Delay or other delay plugins that don't have these like frequency shift sort of things in them. But overall, I like to use this on like background pads. Like if I use like a Rhodes as a pad, I'll put this on there and then Ambiance and then reverse it and then do like a filter automation on it, and it'll sound really cool with a little like frequency sweeps and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely go check this one out. And then the next one is probably the lesser of the three, being the Space Modulator, which is I believe a flanger phaser kind of plugin. You have a bunch of presets. I mean, I guess there's chorus in here, but the main thing I would use this for is flangers. I've used the Gypsy flange before in a video, and it was pretty good. But overall, you just might get a little bit of a more interesting sound than the stock FL Studio plugins or whatever DAW you're using. And with this one, you don't really have to play around with the knob too much because there is a lot of presets, and they are all pretty decent depending on what you need. And then lastly, for this Vahalla trio, the Supermassive, which is probably my most used out of the three. Maybe not my favorite, but definitely I use it the most. This is like a reverb delay combined together. And overall, when you play with this warp knob, you can get some really cool stuff. Particularly, I really like the carousel preset for like accent pluck patterns. It really just works out because you hear the original pattern. So say if you're doing like a straight like chord or something, it would play that, and then maybe a couple like little seconds later, then it would replay that with a lot of delay and reverb. So you can really get some interesting stuff when you really look through the presets. And again, there's a decent amount of them, or just play around with the knobs, the main one being the warp knob, which I mess around with the most. Then next we have Baby Audio with the Magic Switch free chorus plugin. It is very good. I use this in all of like my dark nav type melodies, along with a lot of hyperpop melodies. It's just a lot better than the Fruity Chorus to me, and overall just sounds better. So yeah, there's not really much to mention. It's a super simple interface. You just press this button so it's on, and then you can adjust how much you want to hear it in the terms of this slider. So usually I'll go like 3/4 of the way up, just because full is just a little bit too much. All right, so next we have the Crackle Detune kind of lo-fi plugins, or like background ambience noise, kind of filling space up with like crackles and detune kind of thing. But the main two are tape cassette 2 and then isotope vinyl. So I'll talk about tape cassette 2 first. I believe this has the same knobs as RC20, and overall it just works pretty well. The presets, there are some, but I don't really like any of them. Usually when I use this, I'll turn the noise all the way down and then turn the wow and flutter both to 10%. It's a nice gentle detune or kind of wobbly feeling. Usually I'll use it on like little baby type pianos, or just dark melodies in general, or ethnic melodies. And then the other one being isotope vinyl basically does the same thing, just a little bit different. Usually I only would use this to turn the year down, which just kind of cuts out some frequencies, and then using the warp depth. Overall, I think all the other features are kind of like noise things, and then once you get into like adding crackles in, sometimes it can be a little bit overbearing, and then it's just better to use a texture at that point. So out of these two, I prefer tape cassette 2, even though I know that isotope vinyl got an update. I tried to download it, but it didn't work, so I already had it installed. But overall, the interface just looks a lot better, and I'm pretty sure it functions a little bit better as well. Next, we have the baby comeback delay. There's a full version of this that's just a little bit better, but overall this is a nice delay. Really, I'll just use this sparingly because it is a little bit overbearing. Of course, you can mess with it and make it sound really nice, but I would prefer just using frequency echo, supermassive, or just a normal fruity delay over this. But it is worth something to mention because it is still pretty good. The main thing is adding these little flavor switches, so you can turn it on to like change the sound of it or the flavor a little bit. Personally, I either go with analog or saucy, and then you have the time and feedback knobs, and then the output. I haven't really messed with this too much, but I'm sure they do some pretty nice things. Overall, I haven't really used it that much, but I have seen other people use it to its fullest potential, and it does sound pretty cool. Next on the list is Temper, which is a free distortion plugin, and I prefer this a little bit more than like Fruity Fast Distort or Fruity Blood Overdrive, and I've just gotten this recently, but I've used it in a couple melodies, and overall I like the way it sounds just a bit more. So you have this drive knob and curve and saturation, all the normal stuff, cutoff, feedback, resonance, which I haven't really messed around with that much, and then of course like the level, the main volume sort of thing. But when you hear like a bass play through this, you'll actually see the waveform in kind of like an EQ format. So this side would be like the low end, this side would be the high end. But overall, I just use this for basses, particularly the Musk sub bass, and then like throw a 1 beat gate on it, turn down to like 22%, just to get a little bit more movement in it. All right, so now we can get into the last two for this free effect section. Basically both panning or imaging plugins. One of them being Pancake 2, which is really good if you want things to sweep ear to ear and that kind of stuff. There's also some presets that alter the sound a little bit. Like I think some of like these presets kind of make it sound a little different along with the panning, but usually I'll just stick to either the normal left to right preset or the left to right shy preset. Or sometimes if I'm feeling a little different, then I'll go the opponent's preset, which is more of like a straightforward left to right pan instead of like a gentle sweep. And then the other panning or imaging plugin I use all the time is Ozone Imager 2. So basically you have these two little sliders. It is very simple. You can just boost these all the way up and then your sound will just sound magically wider. It just sounds really cool. It's really simple. And you have these different like options to view it, but I just stick with the polar version. It just looks the prettiest. But overall, very solid. I use this on pretty much like every sound. Just makes things seem more full and wider. All right, so that's pretty much it for all the free stuff that I use. And then here at the end of the video, I just kind of want to mention some like demos that are really good, and then also some more budget plugins or VSTs. So for effects for demos, the best one you can get is pretty much Shaperbox. The demo really doesn't limit you in that many ways. It'll just pop up with this box that says you're using the demo version, and then you can only use one instance per melody. So like you can only have one Shaperbox open in the whole mixer pretty much. But overall, you can it's like a mini automation clip almost. So if like I click on this and click on a preset, then you have like the length. So this would happen over 1 bar. It's like a set time automation clip pretty much. But overall, this is really good just to kind of like sidechain your stuff, or just overall add a lot of movement into your melodies. And I think in the full version, there's also a drive feature, but again, it's the demo. But the demo works perfectly fine and there's nothing wrong with it. And that's the only effect I have for demo. I'm sure there's other ones, but I That's really the only one I've used. And then for VST demos, the big one is Analog Labs 5. It is insane how good the demo is. The only limits are a 20-minute cap on how long the sound plays, which you can just combat by obviously rendering out the audio. And then you don't get the full stock presets, and I also probably can't add other preset folders into it. But overall, what you get will immensely differentiate your melodies. There's some crazy sounds in there. The main one to mention is the acoustic drops. That's probably my favorite like mallet arp of the recent time. It is just very good, along with more like classic synth stuff for like Don Toliver, Nav, Travis Scott type melodies. And then the other demo would be Electra X, but the demo is awful. You cannot render out your things. It'll stop you and say you're using the demo version. You can't render out audio. So basically there probably is some workaround to it, but it's not worth downloading if you're not gonna get the full thing and you just want to look at some of the stock sounds. And then now we can move on to the budget section, which again Shaperbox ends up in, because I believe it's $25 US to get the full thing, which is definitely worth it. I just haven't done it because the demo works fine and spending money is not very fun. And then the other one being Halftime, which is $12. And this will immediately, like, if you're not using FL Studio and don't have gross beat, this is like a necessary thing to halftime your melodies. And I like this a little bit more than gross beat because I think you just have a little bit more options with like the fade in and fade out. I don't really mess with those that much, but really what you do mess with is like 1 bar, half, quarter, eighth, all these different time like increments, and it can really just give you a different sound, along with like the smoothing features where you can just make it sound a little bit different, which you can't really do when you're using like half in gross beat. And then yeah, the only budget VST I have to mention is the GOAT of budget VSTs, which is Expand. It's basically just a mini expensive one. Like the sounds are decent and there's a lot of them and they're all pretty much quality. But the thing with Expand is you just have to wait for it to go on sale. I know that with audio interfaces, the Scarlett ones, the ones that everybody has, there's a bundle where you can get Expand and that together. I've seen some people get that, but normally Expand retails for $100, which is by no means budget, but it does go on low as sale as like $2. I've heard people get it like $2. I personally got it at 15 bucks, so that's still very decent. You just kind of have to wait around for the right time where there's a sale. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. Hopefully you guys are able to download some of this stuff and try it out and change your melodies, your sound selection a little bit. But overall, yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll play a random beat here at the end.